Hi, it's Lynne and welcome to the Make Meaning podcast. I'm a writer and entrepreneur, and through decades of writing articles for magazines and newspapers and authoring books, I've learned that we succeed through inspiration from storytelling and deep and mutually beneficial relationships. This show began in 2018 after my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and I wanted a way to capture his stories and record his insights. It's grown since then to share stories of how people around the world make meaning from very ordinary pursuits. Now I focus on sharing the stories of writers, authors, and those in the world of publishing to learn how and why we create stories that help us make meaning from the mundane. I'm a former journalist and marketing entrepreneur, and I've been teaching writing for more than 2 decades. As a writing coach, I help authors build their brands and share their words. If you'd like to write with me, check out my offerings at lynnegaladner.com. And you'll find more episodes of this podcast at makemeaning.org, as well as on every podcast platform you can think of. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts. Thank you for tuning in to the Make Meaning podcast. Now, on to the show. Hey everyone, it's Lynne. I'm excited to announce that my novel, Woman of Valor, is making its debut September 26, 2023. It would make me so happy if you might pre-order your own copy or email me at lynne@yourppl.com if you'd like to be added to our street team or attend the virtual launch party. This is a novel with a strong female lead. There's lots of romance, deep love, but also betrayal and abuse, and ultimately resolution. And if you're curious about the Orthodox Jewish world, you'll learn a lot from this story. I can't wait to tell you more about it. Stay tuned for our September 8th episode, which will tell you all about Woman of Valor, and I hope to include you in all of our book celebrations. Danny Hankner is an electrician by training, but a writer since he was young, writing stories to record the, quote, wild, ridiculous, crazy shenanigans of his youth. Danny is the founder of Story Unlikely, a truly unique online literary publication that publishes incredible stories, including one of my favorite and best that I've written, The Roads We Travel. Danny writes primarily nonfiction, memoiristic pieces that take chaotic thoughts and transform them into a cohesive, beautiful narrative, inspiring emotions in readers. As a publisher, he loves finding that great author or story, helping polish their writing, and giving them an outlet and an audience. It is my great pleasure to welcome Danny Hankner to the Make Meaning podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to talk with you. And so I want to start at the top with Story Unlikely. So tell me how this award-winning monthly literary magazine came to be and why you started it.
Yeah, so, and as I say on the website, it's kind of an unlikely story. I didn't imagine, starting a magazine. I didn't, starting anything like that. I didn't have any aspirations for such an endeavor. But after years of kind of putting yourself out there as a writer, and especially, and I think, you'll relate to this, I write a host of different genres, but specifically, I think I'm best at memoir. And so when you do that, there's there's an extra element of like emotion that you infuse into those stories that are about you. And so I think, if I go back, I guess publishing stories about, my life and just some of the difficulties that I've been through and seeing the reaction from people. And some of them, are people who know me, who are close. Some of them are like acquaintances, and other ones are just people, God knows where from, somewhere around the planet. And just getting these reactions from people that, whether they're just laughing hysterically or they're just, weeping over their keyboards and just connecting with you on just a kind of a crazy level. Like I never expected that from just putting words on, a screen.
Yeah.
But you do that for, a number of years, and it's like, you don't forget those moments. And when you reach out and connect with people in that way. And so after doing that for, a number of years, and kind of, I'm a little jaded by the industry as well. And just kind of how the publishing industry works in a lot of ways and what they want and what they don't want. And I look at that and I think, like the way that a lot of them go about choosing who to publish, what to publish, why. And I'm like, that's not the filter that I use as a reader. Like, I just want good stories.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of got this idea a couple of years ago, and it was like, well, why don't I just, start my own website? And because I'd always had, people asking me all the time, like, hey, I read this, where can I read more of your stuff? And I'd be like, oh, well, I have a couple things published here or there, or you can, awkwardly scroll through my Facebook feed, And so I'm like, well, I'll just start a little website, and, that way I can put some stories on there, and, I can like passively build an audience, and, one thing leads to the other. And we did a contest, and then we started opening it up, and like, well, I just like good stories. It doesn't have to be by me. Why don't I just open this up to other writers and have them come in? So then we started a regular submission period. And then we just wrapped up our second annual contest. The submission period ended on December 31st. And so we've just had, it's really been growing pretty incredibly. Yeah. And it's just cool to see that, like, I'm not the only person out there that just wants to read good stories, regardless of genre or whatever the flavor of the day is. They just want to read good stories.
Yeah. So there's so much I want to respond to. And I want to say, first of all, that, for our listeners, that this is the first time you and I are talking, but I really am so eager when I see your email in my inbox. And it's funny how I actually even found Story Unlikely. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but I really research where I submit my essays to. And I was looking at Poets and Writers. I think that they have just a great listing, and I really trust a lot of what they say. And so I had not discovered you before. And so when I stumbled upon Story Unlikely, I went to the website, I really read everything, and I'm like, wow, this resonates. And the piece I sent you was, I think, one of my best essays. And, I was really looking for a home for it. I felt like, and in fact, it's funny because I feel like you embody some of the details of, some of the people I was writing about in the essay, like just that you have like a lot of different talents and you're a writer, like it's just really cool. So I followed the instructions. You have to read carefully if you're going to submit to Story Unlikely. I'm telling everybody, but I did, and I submitted. And like the next day you emailed me back, and you not only accepted the essay, but you wrote this really beautiful email that, I'm not going to lie, brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
And it really I was like, wow, these are like two writers, two souls connecting over craft and storytelling. And I would never have found Story Unlikely otherwise. And, I teach a lot of writing classes, and I actually even shared your acceptance email with my students. Yeah. And I teared up again. I'm like, oh my God, you guys, I'm such a sap. I'm like tearing up multiple times, but like, it was just so human and so connected. And that's what storytelling does for us. Yeah, and absolutely. So your email even was very well done. So,
well, so thank you for that. And I, just to comment on that, so from my perspective, and I'm a picky reader. I'm going to say this right up front. Most of the stuff I read, I don't like. And whether it's submissions, just from everyday Joes, or stuff that's published, by people who are in the trade and quote unquote professionals, like we reject a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff from very talented people, and I reject and I'm not like mean about it or anything, but it's like, I have high standards and I want good stuff. And when I see it and I know what it is, I like it, and I'm just blown away by it. But that's rare. And so when I got your story, I think I mentioned this in the comments too. I feel for, and I'm this because I'm a writer and I know what it's like to play the submission game. Yeah. And it's just kind of exhausting. And especially, if you're an adult and you have a family, you got a wife and you got kids and you got a job and you got all these responsibilities that you have to juggle. It's hard enough to find time just to write, let alone finding time to submit.
Yeah.
And it's just and it's just a lot to even, and I get it. I don't want to be like a jerk with Story Unlikely and be like, well, you need to know everything about us before you submit. But at the same time, I certainly appreciate that if people do want to do that. And one of the requirements is signing up, but it's free. So anyway, when you read it, it's like, you knew what we wanted. Yeah. And the only way you could do that is if you take the time to do it. And I was blown away by that first and foremost, because it's like, if you're doing that for how many others, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of work. Yeah. And so just want to commend you on your work ethic and your tenacity, which I think most writers, don't really have. I think a lot of people are drawn into this. And I was the same way when I was a teenager. You kind of look at writing and it's like, oh, this is, here, this glamorous thing, and it's easy. And I could, kick back with a cup of coffee in the morning, and I could just do this all day long, and I don't have to go out and work in the cold. And, I think there's an element of like, as you mature as a human and as a writer, waking up to the realization that it's, everything is still work. And if you want to do it well, it's oftentimes a lot of work. But your story was just, that's exactly the type of stuff that we look for. And it was because it was packed full of emotion. And I think when you can, when I write, I kind of look at, especially with memoir, I'm pulling out memories from my, reservoir. And I'm like, what are the ones that really move me? And so when I go to write those stories, like if it's, it depends on what it is. If it's supposed to be a funny story and I'm not laughing, nobody else is going to laugh at it. And if it's on the same token, if it's a serious story and it's a deep and powerful one, if I'm not crying while I'm writing this thing, how can I expect anybody else to do that?
Yeah.
And so when I read yours, I'm just like, this is, just packed full of meaning. And it was by somebody who clearly loved what they do, is very talented at it, and had the courage to take that step out and put their self like, right, like, here I am. And I think that's I think is more rare than anything else right now. I think there's so many people that fear is just transcends like every aspect of our lives. And so, if anybody's listening and they're like, man, how can I get a leg up? Like, don't be afraid. Write the things that you are maybe afraid of, but don't be afraid of it. Just do it. Put it out there. And it's not like you have to put this out in front of the world right off the bat. Just do baby steps, one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And thank you for the compliment. I really appreciate it. Because, submitting is, well, I always tell people that, I write on some days and I submit on other times. And I write more than I submit, but I keep them separate because they're different energies. And it can be demoralizing because you get way more rejections than acceptances.
You get a lot of rejections. A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And most of the time I'm like, oh, so it wasn't a fit for that person at that moment. Big deal. But like when it's a lot of them on top of each other, it can be really upsetting,
Especially when you have a story that you feel really strongly about. Because we're not going to hit a home run every single time we step up to the plate. But some of the ones that we do and we feel it like intrinsically, like, wow, I put a ton of energy into this. And it's, again, if it's memoir where it's like, this isn't just a fictional creation that I pull out of my brain. This is something that actually happened and has meaning to me. And when I put it out there and it just gets, sort of trampled on and left in the dust again and again and again and again, you can really get demoralized. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard to separate that, even if it's about you, that the rejection isn't of you, even though intellectually it's not, but emotionally it's really hard to get that,
and it's like anything, it takes you just getting used to. I think that's one of the big things. I think a lot of people, they might start out and, they'll submit around and then the rejections start piling up. And I think, maybe it's the fear of like continuing that, because I don't know, I think some people look at it as like, if I continue this and I keep getting rejected, then I myself am, a failure. And I think, that's unfortunate, but I think that's what a lot of people do when they stop doing that. And you can extrapolate that out to, the rest of your life where people, it doesn't have to be writing. They just stop doing something because if they continue it and it doesn't work out how they want to, then they feel like they themselves are a failure.
For sure. For sure. So, you and I are aligned in our belief that the way the publishing industry works right now is not ideal. And to be diplomatic.
That's a nice way to say it. Yes.
I think we both have some pretty radical ideas for how to change that and how to create opportunities where maybe there never had been. So can you talk about that a little bit? Like your perspective on how publishing is and how you'd like to see it be and maybe even what you're heading toward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize if I end up stepping on some toes from people. I'll do my, I'm kind of an open book and I have my own thoughts and perspectives and I know not everybody aligns with them and that's okay. I try to do my best to navigate that, but sometimes you say things and people don't love them. But the thing that has really bugged me in the publishing industry, and this is, I go back almost 20 years now of writing. And being in, various groups. And I've known some really, really talented writers. And I'll be honest, some of the most talented writers I know, you've never heard of.
Yeah.
And that bothers me
Yeah.
because when I look at it, I don't care whose name is on it. And I don't mean to say, like, when I find an author that I like,
Mhm.
you just kind of there's a trust that gets established, and I'll keep going back to that author,
Mhm.
until, and like, if you start reading a bunch and then maybe their quality lowers or whatever, then I'll move on to somebody else. But if they keep delivering, I'm going to keep going back to them. So I don't mean to say that the name doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, like, I look at the publishing, the role of the publisher is to be a gatekeeper for quality. And I look at, like, think of like any other business. What happened to, in the companies of like yesteryear, like the Sears or the Maytags or,
Mhm.
whoever, whatever it may be, the
Mhm.
ones that you knew when they put out a product that you could trust them because
Mhm.
they always delivered with that product. But
Mhm.
I could not ever say that about, any publisher that comes to mind. Maybe there's some small publishers
Mhm.
that I don't know of, but the ones that I know of, I'm not going to just, oh yeah, I trust this publisher because they always deliver. No, they just seem to go with whatever is trending and whatever they think is going to make them the most money in that moment. And I think what we
Mhm.
want to do with Story Unlikely is we want to flip that paradigm on its head,
Mhm.
and we want to build trust in a relationship with our readers. And
Mhm.
so when they see that story in their inbox, or when, years to come, God knows, where this is going to go. But
Mhm.
if it has the Story Unlikely name on it, they know that it's going to be good quality. And it's
Yeah.
not just going to be, here's, this is what's trending this month, or this is the content, or this is the type of writer that we're, I don't really care about those things, are not to say that they're meaningless,
Mhm.
but to me, the quality of the story is king, and that
Mhm.
has to come first. And that's what I want as a reader. And
Mhm.
that's what I want to deliver as a writer and as a publisher.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I really resist about the traditional publishing industry is that it's all about gatekeeping and about
Mm.
your writing making money for other people.
Yeah.
And, that's great if it all works out, but it really becomes not about you or your writing or your story, but about the other people.
Yeah.
And so I do love that we have the opportunity today to, start a Story Unlikely or to self-publish or to whatever, because, you know, you can put your writing out there and then
Mhm.
let the market be the judge of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously it's frustrating to have to start things from scratch when there's
Hmm.
already vehicles in place that you could just hop in and go for an easy cruise. But it's better to have that option to start from nothing than to not have it at all. And the publishing industry, we're kind of in a weird state right now, just with the ups and downs and the volatility and the opportunities that are, from
Hmm.
ebooks and apps and podcasts and social media and all that stuff.
Hmm.
It's really changed the dynamic around dramatically. And nobody really knows exactly what it's going to look like, 10 years down the road.
Hmm.
But I'm definitely thankful for the opportunity to just be able to start something and see it continue to grow. And
Yeah.
just like you said, like, I'm absolutely a free market guy. Like, if something works, put it out there, see what happens. And if it doesn't, then, change and figure out what's going to work. But what you said about, the publishers, just they care about the bottom line more than they care about the writing.
Yeah.
And, as a business owner and entrepreneur, like, I get that there's, it's a tightrope because
Hmm.
everybody has to make money. Like
Hmm.
profit isn't a bad thing. It's not evil because you want to make money. Like,
Yeah.
you have to do it to survive. And so I
Yeah.
get that. But like, I look at, and so I'm an electrician by trade.
Hmm.
And so I run my own company. I started, almost 10 years ago now, and it's
Hmm.
been very successful.
Hmm.
And I think, one of the main reasons for that is because when I go to someone's house and I do a job for them, I
Hmm.
think, well, what would I want if I was in this person's shoes? If this was me, what would I want? And I
Hmm.
always treat our customers the way I would want to be treated.
Hmm.
And so I don't think, and obviously, like, I still run the books and run it in a way that we're profitable, but
Hmm.
satisfying the customer always comes first.
Hmm.
And I feel like if you do that, if that's your aim,
Hmm.
and as long as you're, reasonably good with the books and numbers, like, the profits will come after that.
Hmm.
And what I found is that, like, in this, like, I don't advertise. We don't spend a dime on advertising. There's all kinds of stuff that we don't have to do that larger companies
Hmm.
spend gobs of money on.
Hmm.
I mean, so I had a plumber over to my house the other day. My sewer was backed up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was chatting with him because I said, do I pay you now or do I need to, send me an invoice? And I sent in the mail. He's like, oh no, he's like, we went to paying, at time of service only. So I was chatting with him about it. And he goes, yeah, he's, we did and they're a smaller company. I mean, they're only like 8 guys and I've only, we're even smaller than that. And he goes, yeah, we finally did the numbers just recently and we looked back to see how much we're owed jobs that have been unpaid. And he said we had $180,000.
Oh my God.
I know for a company that's pretty small, they're not a huge company.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm mad if I go like, $500 a year and I don't get paid for it.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, we're so small that it's all word of mouth. And so our good customers, they spread our word around and we get like good customers, we get good customers. And so there's all kinds of things that God only knows what I don't have to deal with because we do such a good job for all of our customers and not to use that to mean that other companies aren't doing a good job, but just in that process, it's just been incredible for us. And so the profits come out of taking care of people and doing things well. So long story short, in the same way, I think publishers, in their, I hate to say it, but in their greed, they've missed the mark from a quality standpoint. And I think they're actually missing out on a greater opportunity for profit when they could, again, if you establish yourself and your relationship with your customers, they'll keep coming back to you.
Oh yeah.
So imagine what you don't have to spend on advertising, where you don't have to just trip over each other to try to make that sale. And people they come right to my door. So as an electrician, like I have more customers coming to me than I can take care of. So I pick and choose my customers. But what if it was like that with your publishing industry and you had so many people coming and want to buy your books that, you could barely, that's like a dream come true. And I really think that could happen if they change their mindset around and we'll see if it happens with Story Unlikely.
Yeah. Just making it a more human and, quality model where you're looking at that connection, that relationship and like you said, taking care of people. Totally disrupting big business and the way that publishing is and all that. And so it's a revolutionary idea. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do love that we have way more options and we can create possibilities.
There's nothing worse than buying a book. And in the same way, like think about when you buy a CD, back when they used to sell them. I don't know so many more, but you'd hear that one song on the radio and you're like, oh, that's a fantastic song. And then you go buy the CD and the rest of it's garbage. And you're like, I just got robbed. That was terrible. And so the same thing is with a book. Like, you read a book by an author and then you go buy another one by them, or maybe it's just something that grabbed your attention, but it's terrible. And it's like, I just got robbed $15. That was garbage. You feel
That's the worst. Yes. Yeah. I can't stand it if I pay for a book and then I don't enjoy it. And it's like, so you always have to look. I always open it to a random page in the bookstore and I'm like, is this a good page? Do I like it? Because if not, I'm not buying it, but anyway, so I want to get back to you. So I know that you write short stories and essays. I'd love for you to tell me about your writing, about what inspires it, where you've been excited to be published and what you're hoping for from your writing career.
I got started in writing and I never, as a kid, I didn't like writing. I didn't like reading. And, I think a little bit can be blamed on maybe the public school system and some of the books that they threw at me that didn't do it for me. But some of it, is probably just being a kid and some of it was just me. But it wasn't until I watched Lord of the Rings that sparked me to want to go read more. And so the Lord of the Rings, all 3 of them came out when I was in high school.
Okay.
My senior year, the 3rd one came out. And I loved them. I was absolutely blown away. I always liked fantasy stuff, but it was good enough. It was so good that I'm like, you know what? I want to read the books. And then I had heard that we had like this Silmarillion that had all the history stuff. I'm like, that sounds cool. So I started reading that, and about that same time. So I graduated and, this is 2004. And so kind of like today, although the trends I think are starting to shift, everybody goes to college, right? Except I didn't want to. I'm like, I don't really need to. I want to become an electrician. I want to work with my hands. I want to do, something it requires a brain to do that. And that's what I wanted to do. So I was waiting at home. I applied, I got accepted, but I had to wait until spring. So I was just I was living at my parents' home, 18, working part-time, had a ton, gobs of time on my hand. And I just sort of like, even at 18, I kind of saw just like my youth sort of like slipping away. And it sounds silly, but we had gosh, we had such a good time in high school and even in middle school, and through the remainder of my young adult life, I had a great group of friends who were just very creative, and our whole high school was basically pranking each other with benign jokes and playing video games and eating McDonald's at midnight. And so I looked at all that and I thought, gosh, what a great thing that we had. But it's a shame to see that go away. And so I just started writing stories down. I'm like, I should just start writing these down so we don't forget them. So I started writing those down, and then I passed them along to my buddies, and they just thought it was just the best. And so I kept doing it. They're like, write one about this one, write one about that one. And so I just kept doing that. And I kind of, had like this idea. I'm like, well, if there's any demographic that would be hard to capture with the written word, surely it's the young adult male. And so I'm like, if I can do that, then maybe I can, write some really good stuff. And so I wrote a few novels. Were terrible, but hey, it's your first time. And I started writing short stories, and I, got into some different writers groups, and really, started to get critiqued on my stuff, and had some, really good people around me to help sharpen all that stuff. And so I did that for years, started, playing the submission game, started to get a few things published, but then, life hit, and I got married, I got laid off, started my own business, started having kids. And so I came to a point, just from a time standpoint, well, I can keep writing or I can keep submitting, but I don't really have time to do both. So I decided to keep writing because I like to do that. And I saw, regardless of whether it gets published or not, I'm still going to keep writing, stories, and I'm still going to keep improving, versus if I just submit all the time with what little time I have, maybe I'll get published, but maybe I won't. And then at the end of the day, I'm not really up anything.
Sure.
So I just did that for years. And then I think things kind of started to turn. So my wife and I, we lost our son, Caleb. It was a third trimester pregnancy. And
I'm so sorry.
And it was, incredibly difficult. Yes. And that was, just devastating to both of us. And I remember being in the hospital, while we're just processing this, and I just did what came naturally to me. I grabbed the laptop and I just started writing. And that's, I wrote a story about it. And, the next day or two, I just posted it on Facebook. I thought, well, people need to know, they're going to be asking, they're going to be wondering. So I guess this is kind of a catch-all. I'll just post it on here. Yeah. And that was the first time where I had, the responses from people, it was unbelievable how many people reached out to me, and that they were, they're like, I'm crying all over myself and just reading your writing, and I'm so sorry. And that was, it was very, I didn't realize how therapeutic it was. I didn't understand, that was the first real emotional blow in my life that I had experienced. And I didn't really, understand that you need to talk about these things, and you need to tell people about it. It's its own form of therapy. Yeah. But also the connections that you sort of gain with people, it's indescribable. Yeah. And so, from that point on, I'm like, I shouldn't just, limit my stuff to, whether stories around a campfire or the random publisher who wants to take it. Why don't I start posting this stuff on Facebook? Yeah. And so I just did for 5 years. I did that. I'd write a story about once a month, and I'd post it on there, and it was, and it was kind of all over the place, from hilarious stuff from when I was a kid to difficult stuff. A little over a year after Caleb passed, my dad just suddenly passed away unexpectedly. That was also very, very difficult. Yeah. But writing about it, I'm so thankful that was a part of my life, because that really helped me process and grieve through this. And I, now coming out on, that was 5 years ago, so that my dad passed away the day after Christmas, which this year was 5 years. And so, enough time has expired that you can kind of look back, and it's not that, I don't mean to give the impression that I'm perfectly healed. I'm all everything is I'm healed to, I think, to the extent that I can at this point in time. Yeah. But I also feel that, there's some things that just, they're going to be with you no matter where you're at. It's going to be hard, But looking back at it, I'm like, what I went through, like I should have some sort of like psychological disorder. I should have some sort like, and I never like before that, I never understood like, I don't want to say people who are crazy, but people who have like psychological disorders, like some of that stuff, I never understood it. I've been around people that have had this stuff, and I'm like, what on earth has, possessed this person to become, so whacked out?
Mm-hmm.
But now I know, like I get it, like emotional trauma to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a miracle that I like look at that and I'm like, it's a miracle that I don't have some sort of weird tick or whatever, but I know all the things, that you can do. And I'm not at all dismissing or discounting any of that, whether it's being around family and friends and prayer and all in community and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I know the biggest thing for me was writing about it. And that's what, had changed me and helped me heal more than anything. And so, looking at, in the years since, it's like, here's this gift that anybody can have. It's like, you don't have to be, the best writer out there to write about your stuff or talk about it. And so I think a lot of that, is in the back of my mind, starting Story Unlikely and sort of the goals and what we want to see and what we want to do. I think it's so much bigger than just telling good stories, and not to dismiss, the light stuff and the fun stuff, because I love to laugh. I love funny stories. I think stories, are like everything. They come in all shapes and sizes and genres, and you should do that. But I think absolutely, like there's a certain preference, to those really deep, meaningful stories.
Yeah, I tell writers all the time that, if your writing touches one person and makes them feel less alone, it was successful.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's what it is. Like, it sounds like the types of things that you've been brave enough to write about could really help other people know that they're not going through really hard times or traumas alone, that even though they don't know you, because your words resonate, you're in it together. And that's really powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so, and thank you for doing that too, because I think that it is courageous to write about these topics and to put yourself out there and be vulnerable. And I actually have an episode on the podcast with Christopher Locke, who is a guy that I went to Goddard College with for my MFA. And he writes really raw, really vulnerable, and it's so powerful. And he said, you just got to show up the way you're meant to show up and really be brave, because other people need that too. It helps you, but it helps them too,
Absolutely.
So, all right. So what is your vision for Story Unlikely and for your own writing going forward? And I have to add to that, I want to see all those Facebook posts in a collection, which I would buy, but what's your vision for both going forward?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it kind of changes too as Story Unlikely continues to grow and evolve. Originally, I didn't really have much of a vision. It was just more of an idea of like, oh, I'll just start a website and here, we'll send out a story a month and passively accumulate an audience if there's one for it. And now seeing the success and in just 2 short years, we now have thousands of subscribers and I think we're in 77 countries.
Wow.
And every day, I think we've been averaging like 25 new subscribers every day for months now. And so
it's amazing.
It's incredible. And I did not expect that, but here it is. And so like, when you see the potential for something, it changes what you think it could become. Because I think the last time I spoke to you, I think, I said, we want to get to 100,000 subscribers. And I hate talking like in terms like that, because I hate, saying like, you just feel like one of those idiots who, their heads up in the clouds. And especially, in this day and age where everybody, is on YouTube and everybody has some, just stupid social media stuff they post every day. And I have my following. I'm like, blow my brains out. Okay. So I feel like an idiot saying that, but I mean, you do have to talk numbers and you have to be realistic about things as well. And so like, that's kind of a lofty goal, but I really think we can get there. And especially just with the traction that we've had, even the last few months, like that's absolutely an attainable goal. And so if that's attainable, well, what else is attainable? Because when I started this, I'm like, well, if we can get 100 subscribers, we can get 200. And if we can get 200, we can get 400. And if we can get 400, we can get 800. And we can get, and on and on and on and on. And so I'm not saying that we're going to become, the next Joe Rogan, But I do think that if you can, if we can build a big enough audience, that we could potentially start to change things within the industry. Because when you have a large enough group, people start to take notice, and they're going to say, okay, well, how did you get to be so successful? What is it? And I'll tell them. And I think some, in some of their arrogance won't want to listen to it and won't, they'll dismiss it, but other people will start listening, and they're like, you know what? Maybe we should go back to just telling good stories. Maybe we should just go back to the quality and put that as our top priority instead of whatever secondary things that we keep heaping on into the number one spot there. So that's, I mean, I don't have, I guess, anything too specific other than, we want to start getting to print. And we want to, keep on with our contest and keep on with the way that we're submitting and doing the magazine. I always want to keep, so right now we send out one story a month. And it's free. Sign up. There's no cost to that, and we don't blow up your inbox with. And I mean, oh my gosh, I hate so many things. You sign up and then they send. I mean, it's every 2 days they're sending you something, and I'm like, I don't want this. Send me something like one, every once in a blue moon, but don't blow up my inbox. So we send out one story a month. That's it. We want to respect people's inboxes. And, we always want to keep, that's kind of a thing that I want to keep that, free. I want to keep the ability to let anybody join up and read stuff. But at some point, and maybe, it might even be within this next year, at some point, we're going to have to monetize. The bigger it gets, the more costs are associated and the more time it takes to keep things up. And so it's just part of the game. So at some point we'll start doing that, and we'll look into, maybe a subscriber platform and, adding more perks on and all that kinds of stuff. But the details, I don't have any of that at the moment, but it's all on the radar.
So what I'm hearing is that Story Unlikely cannot be contained, and big things are ahead, and we should all make sure that we're reading intently so that we are part of the movement. Yeah?
Well said. Well said.
Okay, good. Awesome. And of course, I'm going to share in the show notes all of the links, and so people can sign up if they haven't, and they can learn all about you and everything like that. So as our conversation comes to a close, I would love to hear what advice you might offer to writers who are listening, both in general and if they are interested in submitting to Story Unlikely.
Yeah. Well, I think I touched on, one of the big things earlier when I said, be courageous, be brave. Don't let the fear of whatever it is hold you back. And one of the interesting things is, being in the editor publisher seat is I get a different perspective. And so I get, a lot of submissions sent to us, and I read through these every night, and it's some of it is pretty amazing, because there are people out there who, they email us and they say, gosh, I've been writing a long time, but I've never submitted anything, but I came across Story Unlikely, and for whatever reason it was, we liked your vibe or whatever, I felt comfortable enough to send something to you. So it's kind of cool to get those things, but it's like eye-opening for me that like, wow, how many people are out there that are writing, but they're just, they're timid and they don't want to come out of the woodwork. So I would say, if that's you, just do it. Just take that leap, take that first step and submit it. Yeah, just be brave and do that. And I think as far as if people are submitting to Story Unlikely, what advice do I have? Write really well, write really good. Do your opening. Because one of the things that we filter out, we have people put the first 250 words in the body of the email, and that is a filter. And because there's plenty of submissions that are not very good, and so we just delete them after reading the first 250 words. So I would say if you want to get a second look, make sure your opening is a killer opening. And that means you need to take time and practice your openings, keep writing, mini short stories, look at other writers and how they're doing openings, and then look at it from as if you were an editor and you were going to be accepting or declining a story, and see what pulls you in. And it's not, and I would say there's all kinds of advice out there, and not all of it's good. I remember one of the things that really bugged me early on is, you'd hear, especially from in like genre fiction, is like, oh, you gotta incorporate conflict in that first opening sentence. And then they list like 20 other things that you had to incorporate in that first sentence. And I'm like, am I writing like 400 word sentences here to get this, and of course, they don't do it themselves. The people who give this advice of the 20 things that you have to do in your opening scene, they don't, they never do it. And I'm just like, why does it have to, it doesn't have to be conflict. Conflict's a great thing to use, but it doesn't have to be. There's all kinds of other things to do in there. So I would say, trust your instincts and what is it that draws you in as a reader? What do you want to see? And then try to incorporate that into your own writing.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Great advice. Awesome. Danny Hankner, it has been such a pleasure to talk with you today on the Make Meaning podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Lynn. I appreciate it. It was great being on here and finally getting to chat with you.
Thanks for listening to the Make Meaning podcast with Lynn Galadner. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you've heard, subscribe and share this episode with the meaningful people in your world. And please leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more at makemeaning.org or lynngaladner.com.